I'm so sorry, guys. I didn't actually think I was wearing this. I'm so used to wearing it all the time. It's just been second nature now. Where are we? Oh, yes. Hi, I'm Rob. I'm a smartphone filmmaker, and welcome to my YouTube channel where I cover everything smartphone filmmaking, from short films to accessory videos to tips videos on how to make short films with your smartphone and exactly how to make professional footage. And also, like today's one, I make very unique FILMIC PRO tutorials. So if you enjoy that kind of stuff, you want to learn about smartphone filmmaking, I want to be inspired to make smartphone films, then do hit the subscribe button and the like button. Now today's a really exciting video. I'm going to be talking to you about 10 things that you need to check before you hit that record button on FILMIC PRO. Now this is going to be a range of beginner tips to ones that are a bit more detailed. So whether you're someone who's just starting out and want to know what exactly to do to get the most professional consistent footage, or whether you're someone who's used FILMIC PRO for a long time and want to see if there's anything that maybe you forget or miss out, this is going to be a really great video for you and hopefully you find it really useful. So first things first, we're going to talk about, guys, before hitting record on FILMIC PRO, you want to check your focus reticule. Now it's red at the moment, so it's locked, but if we tap it again, it becomes white and we'll see the focus change. And now you can move this reticule whilst it's white or red, and it will focus on various parts of your screen, whatever you want it to focus on. And you'll see the focus slightly changing to wherever you move it. Now white is good for a run and gun situation, so if you're doing an action scene where someone's running past you or you're following someone, that can be quite helpful, and you can double tap it as well, remember, to make it large so you're getting a bigger sample size of the screen. Most of the time though, I keep it red unless I'm doing a really active scene. This way you can have really consistent footage with your focus. So if you're moving the camera around, or if you've got one spot, like for example on this plant I want to focus on, just hold it there and it will stay on that. The next one we want to check for number 2 on our things to check before hitting record button on FILMIC PRO is our exposure reticule. So that's the white circle here on the left hand side. Similarly with the focus reticule, you can move that around and that changes the exposure on the screen, so you can adjust that to whatever suits your needs and your lighting situation. And to tap that again, that will lock it. And similarly with the focus reticule, exactly the same in fact. You double tap it, it will take up more of the screen, double tap it again, it will go small, and then red to lock it. You really want to lock your exposure on FILMIC PRO before you start a take, because if you don't, you're going to have the exposure changing on your image from left to right, if you're going inside to outside, a shady spot to a bright spot, and it's going to be a real surefire way of everyone knowing that it's quite amateur footage. So you desperately want to make sure that that's locked in for your exposure to make sure you've got consistent footage and professional looking footage. The next thing we're going to do is check our storage. So if you go to the bottom of the screen here next to audio meter, that's yellow. When the storage is green, that means you've got plenty of storage. Yellow means you're starting to run out, you're eating into it. And when it goes red, you want to make sure that you export your footage. So whether it's onto a SanDisk flash drive like I have, or if you want to put it onto iCloud and transfer your files there, that will then allow you to go back into the green and start filming without worrying about running out of storage. If FILMIC PRO asks you at some point when it goes red, you're running out of storage, would you like to continue recording? Do not hit yes. I've done that several times myself and I got the footage back and it turns out that it's really stuttery and unusable. So you're just wasting your time by recording after it's giving you that warning. It's there for a reason, and I've learned that the hard way. So definitely, once it gets into the red, export your footage and then carry on. That leads me nicely to just above the storage, the battery, which is in red there. When it's green, similarly to the battery, the storage, it means if it's in green, you've got plenty of battery. Yellow means you're running out of battery a little bit. And in red as it is now, you need to charge it. So I'm hoping I can get through this now, which I should be able to because it's about 30% battery. But yes, if you're filming out in the sticks somewhere, you really want to take attention to this. So if it's red battery, stick a charger in it if you can whilst you're filming as well, and that'll save you a lot of hassle. The next thing we're going to look at is your resolution. So you want to just make sure that that's the same every time you start a new shot. So if you go into settings here with the bottom right cog, tap that, and you've got resolution on the top left, tap that. Now I use 4K on my short films, so that way I'm allowed to crop my footage afterwards in DaVinci Resolve, which is how I edit my stuff. That way you can just crop your footage without losing any kind of resolution or quality in your image. Whereas if you use 1080p, you can't crop. But if you're fairly confident you're not going to need to, then it's perfectly fine to film in. No one's going to cry if you're not using 4K, unless they're weirdos. And then you come out of that, just double checking that your resolution is consistent for all your shots is a really good technique to use. That way you're not using the resolution from a previous project, you're just making sure you've got consistency with the one project you're using. Next up is your frames per second, making sure that that's doubled with your shutter speed. That way you get good motion blur and it's nice and cinematic and looks professional. So again, we go into settings, tap that cog, tap that, hold on the cog, tap that. And then we go to frame rate, tap that, and you'll see you've got 24 frames per second. Now that will change if you want to use slow motion, you'll be using 60 or 120, 140. But for regular cinematic footage, you want 24 frames per second or 25. Come out of this, so we've got 24 frames per second locked in there. Back to main screen. And then we tap this button on the left-hand side, which will then bring up both our dials. And on the left-hand side, you'll see we've got shutter speed at 1/48. So that is what you want if you've got 24 frames per second. You want to match 24 frames per second by doubling it into your shutter speed. So you get nice cinematic motion blur. Tap that 1/48 to lock it. Now you're going to have nice and consistent footage. Double check that every time you start a new shot or filming in a new location for your same project. But that's exactly what you want for cinematic footage. The next thing you're going to want to check is your ISO. So here above the shutter speed, you've got it at 41. So the lowest this can go to on my phone is 23. And you want to keep it below 100. So you can see you get way overexposed. You'll lose a lot of detail in your footage. So ideally, you've got it at the lowest it can go. That way you're retaining as much information in the image as possible. You're not going to lose and have, loads of noisy footage in the background where it's like dancing little bugs in the corners of the shades and the light and stuff like that. The way to keep it at your lowest for ISO is just to punch in more lights, so artificial lighting, film lights, that kind of stuff. But for example, with this shot, as long as you keep it under 100, you should be fine, more or less. But I'll keep it at 42 to 38, and that way it's staying low, and we'll keep as much detail as possible whilst having a nice lighter image. The next thing we're going to want to check is our white balance. So if you go to the bottom left here and tap on white balance, and we tap on the AWB till we get it to blue, that is auto white balance. Now, in the same way you've got with the focus and exposure reticule, with this one, if you've got it on auto white balance, it's going to change when you're moving the camera. So you're going to get this horrible change where, again, if you're going from inside to outside, it's just going to change the white balancing. So the same way that exposure will change, it will change the white balance, whether you're going to light to dark, that kind of thing. Or if the sun changes as well, that's going to really dramatically change things. So what you want to do is tap on AWB. That has white balance locked. Now you can use this, there's nothing wrong with that. But I prefer to tap it again. And then you get white balance auto lock on record. Now what that does is it's sampling everything in front of the image with the sensor. And when you hit auto lock on record, that's just going to take the white balance from the moment before you hit record, so it'll always be consistent. Something else you can do is use the icons at the bottom, so you've got different types of lighting. Obviously we're using daylight at the moment, so this isn't going to work. But you've got overcast as well, or you've got sunshine, very sunny weather. But as you can see, when we use auto white balance, that corrects it. So a lot of the time, if you're in really sunny weather, that will work perfectly well, these icons. But otherwise, I tend to use the white balancing on the bottom right here, and then lock it just to make sure it's nice and consistent and it's as good as possible. Because the more you get right in camera and get right live there and then when filming, the less worry you're going to have in post-production. So you really want to get all these things down and tied down and locked in, so that we can have nice consistent footage and you won't have so many headaches when you come to post-production. That brings me nicely onto the focus wheel. So with the focus wheel on the right hand side, you can slide that up and down. You want to make sure this is checked before you hit record on FILMIC PRO for sure, because let's say you want to focus on the leaves in the background here, like I have now, but you still got the focus on something shadow depth from a shot before, and you start filming. When you get this back, it's going to look terrible. You won't be able to use it. So make sure you always check your focus wheel is exactly dialed in to what you want it to be dialed in. That way, you're going to be able to use your footage, and it's going to look precise and really, really professional. And the last thing to check before you hit record is your audio meter. Now, I see a lot of people complain that they're not getting audio from their FILMIC PRO. Then when it turns out they've had the audio basically switched off. So the white marker you got at the bottom of your audio bar there, that's where your sound is peaking. So this is where you want it, in between the two sets of zeros on the right hand side. I tend to have it just to the left of the last two sets of zeros. If you have it up to the top, you'll see that it goes red. So if I'm talking louder and louder, you'll see that bar just touched red as it gets towards that white line there. Whereas if I bring this down, that's perfect. We're not going to get into the red, so that's what you want for sound. If we bring it right down to the bottom, you're not going to hear anything. Now I wanted to give you guys a bonus tip as well, because 10 didn't feel enough, and that is this. Before you hit the record button on FILMIC Pro, make sure without a shadow of a doubt, you turn airplane mode on. Turn your Wi-Fi off, turn your Bluetooth off, unless you're using a gimbal and things like that. But you really want those switched off, and make sure that airplane mode is turned on, so that way your phone is not picking up any kind of internet signals, other phone signals, that kind of stuff, and you won't get any kind of horrible sounds during your shots and filming. Well guys and gals, thank you for watching. I hope you found this video really useful. A lot of checkpoints before you hit that record button, but it's well worth keeping in mind so that you can get the best footage possible, and it will really save you from having massive headaches in post-production as well if you get everything right that you possibly can live in shot. And if you did enjoy this video, then do hit that subscribe button and like button so you don't miss out on any more of these amazing FILMIC Pro tutorials. I got a bunch of them, so I'll put a link in the description below and the comments as well, so that you can check those out and binge watch them to your heart's content. Now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know if you have. Take care. Bye bye.